If you are a corporate manager that wants to have more women in leadership positions, or if you are one of these amazing, incredible, inspired and ambitious women that want to have more impact in their organization, but is really fed up of being told to be more confident, watch this video. So in this video, I want to talk about one central mistake that we observe being made over and over again, especially in corporations, but also in the nonprofit sector and even in a lot of startups. We're going to talk about what's going wrong in career mentoring for women, how this is affecting those women, and especially what, if you're a corporate manager or if you're one of those incredible women, you can do about this to get this out of your way. And let me be super clear, this is not about bashing the fact that there's some sort of glass ceiling, you know? This is not another video talking about there needs to be more women empowerment. Actually, if you are that kind of manager that just wants to freaking increase the bottom line of your team, you're going to love what's coming next. I'm Astrid, I'm the founder of The Arc. We organize international boot camps, retreats and coachings for impact-driven individuals. Every week we reserve a couple of free coaching spots, and if you grab one of them, which you do by just clicking on the link below, we will sit down together with you and find out what is your real bottleneck and whether The Arc can support you on your journey. So this whole thing started with a great conversation I had this week with two very great friends of mine. One is a man, the other one is a woman. We've known each other for years. We've studied together at the same university. We've all, I would say, had pretty similar levels of ambition and probably more or less the same level of intelligence and energy. And we've all been into consulting right after university. He and I, we didn't have children, she did. He and I climbed up the career ladder massively fast, she didn't. She and I, we both quit our jobs. I founded my own company. She is now in search of a different job and basically being a mom. And he is still working and still being on that fast track career path within his consulting company. Realizing this, we felt that we were actually a pretty representative pick of people who would be able to discuss why and why not women would advance on the career ladder. Because there's one thing that we did find pretty striking is, although it's been talked about for so many years, it still is a fact that in middle management, women are pretty present, whilst when you move further up, it's just getting thinner and thinner. So why is it that this happens to so many women? One great explanation that I personally love comes from Sheryl Sandberg and her book Lean In. And she's talking about how being on that leadership level table of big bosses that are steering the fortunes and futures of your company just isn't very inspiring. You know, being on the table, getting out your purse, your mobile phone and your car key just isn't like a really cool thing. And having to compete in that guerrilla testosterone atmosphere just doesn't sound like a very fulfilling thing, whilst everything you want to do is to actually, you know, run your company in a better way. So I love this reasoning because I do feel that's really matching my personal experience from a lot of women saying, you know what, I just don't find it particularly inspiring to be like these guys. And I love that explanation, but I feel that this is equally true for both men and women, because a lot of men that I'm meeting on my journey have been saying exactly the same thing. So I don't feel it's the one and only explanation as to why there are not so many women in that sort of leadership positions. So what we felt instead to be the much more important criterion was the kind of networks that you're hanging out with, the connections you're having within that company. And that brought us to the topic of learning on the job, which a lot of times happens through career mentoring, that either takes place by being the boss of someone else or by actually and literally being that one mentor that is being picked by HR to basically advance your career within a certain organization. And my male friend suddenly got this realization that he said, OMG, you know what I'm realizing while talking to you is I'm mentoring so many people, and what I am mentoring the girls on is how to be more confident, how to be more assertive, how to stand up for themselves. Whilst with the men, I take that as a given. I take that as something that they already master. And with them, I talk about how can they brand themselves as being the person who's really pushing the business forward. How can I introduce them to others, and where can I help them to support in getting new clients? And I loved that honest level of shock that was in his eyes by just realizing this sincerely in that very moment, because I had that same experience, and it shook me so much to see this from his perspective. Because frankly, I remember when I joined my employer, I was the most confident woman in the world. Thinking back to, my high school, my university time, I have always been the one who ran projects, especially, in my student organization. I've been leading teams that were up to 80 to 100 people from, 10 or 11 different countries. And I was running 4 or 5 conferences in 4 or 5 countries at the same time. So it never occurred to me that I could be someone who is a victim, who needs to be empowered. And in the first 2-3 years of being employed, that never was an issue. I literally felt like the strongest person on the corridor, much to the pleasure or sorrow of my interns. But making a long story short, I remember climbing up the career ladder in our company. I suddenly was exposed to the first women empowerment trainings and faced with stories where I was supposed to be a victim based on my gender, based on something that I could not change very easily. And this led me to see microaggressions all the time. And what I found interesting was that these microaggressions probably were there before. I just never saw them, and I never made them my identity. So I too suddenly started to feel like someone who needed to be empowered, although the reality was that I was a high potential. I had been on the fast track for promotions. I loved what I was doing, and I found it easy to get new clients on board and really think through how can we improve our business case, how can we get extra revenues in, and how can we make our consulting service better and better. And what is so interesting that this even led to me, founding a second company with my former boss after I quit. So it really is a lot of amazing stuff. And nevertheless, I felt like someone, being a woman, life has to be hard. So I think there's a very valid question to be asked, and that is, what about the unconscious mindsets with which we are approaching men and women? Although we might be people who really are committed to women's growth, be it as the most amazing boss or as a woman myself, because I too have had that sort of thinking. If our mentoring was not based on supporting women to be more confident, but just take that as a given and support them in how can they increase the bottom line, how can they learn the business, and who can we introduce them to when it comes to getting better clients and, more important, people on board to support their business side. And just thinking about that was such a relief to me, because frankly, I've always hated the idea of having to be more assertive, be more, self-confident and standing up more for myself. I would have been so much more interested in learning the business and really, grasp my business case more and present that. Because frankly, I think about a lot of teenage girls that you might know, if you're fathers or if you had siblings or just the friends around you. It's not like women are not confident. It's not like they are not made for having their own stage. Of course, we love presenting the stuff that we are good at. And why would it happen that as soon as we become employed, this thing changes radically? I just don't get it. So on a final note, what can you even do as a woman? Let's start with that. I would say, FCUK, any sort of mentor that wants to go down that road with you of coaching you to be more confident, to be more assertive, of helping you with your money mindset. Because what if you were these things already? What if the reason why you're having that mentor is because you already are freaking awesome, right? And what if you instead asked for advice on, let's spar about the business, what are new opportunities that my team could dive into? What are new client bases that we could get off the hook? And how can you introduce me to people who will make it easier for me to present my case on a bigger platform? What if success was your confidence coach and not so much the wishful thinking of you having to pull your courage together and try to imagine that you are more confident? And second, as a corporate manager, resist the temptation to make being more confident the main topic of your coaching. And if that's what your employee or your mentee desperately wants, tell her that she is already confident and assertive enough. Share this video with her if you like, but don't go down that route that this is the stuff that she needs to work on in order to really get the things that she wants, and instead take it as a given. Help her to, build the business and rather be the person to give herself that introductions to other important people in or outside the organizations that will support her in building the platform that she deserves. And worst case, just imagine that this person that's sitting in front of you is just a guy, and don't, chicken out from challenging that person. Dare to be a little bit of a pain in the ass, because that's sometimes what people need as well. So I hope that this video was valuable for you. Please tell us in the comments below whether or not you had similar experiences or different experiences. Because for us, this topic is so important and we really want to get a more intensive dialogue. And as always, if you're someone who wants to get started with the stuff that's being said in these videos for real, don't hesitate to sign up for one of the coffee chats in the link below and engage with us on a 45 to 60-minute free coaching where we will talk about what's really holding you back and how you can turn your talents, passions, and values into something that inspires yourself and others. By the way, this applies to you whether you're a man or a woman. So with these words, I'm wishing you a wonderful rest of the day, and I can't wait to hear from you soon. Bye-bye. And by the way, if you're one of those well-intended people now who are saying, I'm glad that she's wearing a white blouse, but really, as a woman, especially as a blonde woman, you shouldn't be wearing your hair open because it's going to make you look incompetent. Get a life.